Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. I'm Audley Stevenson, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Audacious Living Podcast. I can guarantee you that you will not find a more audacious podcast on the web, and that's what we do here each and every week. We bring you fascinating conversations, insightful guests, and I really appreciate the listeners for taking some time out of their day and choosing to spending it us with here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping you live your best audacious life ever. As always, I encourage you to connect with us through our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram under the handle The Audacious Pod. And then if you head over to Facebook and search The Audacious Living Podcast, you will certainly find us there as well. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, then you know if you click the notification bell down below, you'll instantly be connected and receive instant notification. So it's easy to like, follow, subscribe, share, tell a friend, and hey, let's just keep this audacious conversation going. Now, we're going to spend some time on this edition of the podcast talking about the importance of taking control of our lives. Now, we probably all could relate, and at one point or another had this feeling like we didn't have full control of our lives. We've all been there. Maybe there's the pressures at home, the demands of the job, or countless other things that we have going on in our world. We're pulled in all kinds of directions. It certainly can be overwhelming. It definitely is a lot. It definitely can be stressful. And really, if we're not careful, and we all know this, but if we're not careful, we could get burnt out or even worse. And that's where we need to take care of ourselves and manage our time and manage and be very selective about the things that we choose to do. Now, Allison Graham is an executive coach. She's a resiliency expert and a speaker who authored her latest book, and I got a copy here, Take Back Your Weekends, Stress Less, Do More, and Be Happier. It's a book that gives readers the tools to find harmony between the home life and the work life. Using her personal problem-solving framework, Allison unpacks exactly how to harness the power of good stress, because there is such a thing, while at the same time minimizing that soul-sucking, destructive, bad stress. There's lots of good stuff that came out of this conversation with Allison, so we're going to get right into it. So without any further ado, here's my chat with Allison Graham. Enjoy. So if it's good with you, let's get started. Thank you for being here, Allison, on the Audacious Living Podcast. A lot of fun here having you today.
Oh, I love it. I'm so excited. Audacious living. It just makes me want to smile.
Doesn't it? Doesn't it really? And so oftentimes people say, well, did you plan it with the name Audley? And I know it just kind of just happened. And I went with it and it felt right. And so here we are.
Here we are. Awesome.
And here we are today talking. You've got a book out, Take Back Your Weekends. And I think right off the bat, people will go, oh, wow. Like that's they can connect with that off the bat, and I think this very much ties into your work as a resiliency expert. So maybe sort of talk about what you do and then how that led to the latest book.
Sure. So I work with teams and executives on their resilience, right? Like we're all stressed, and I don't actually believe we need to be as stressed as we are. So right. I go in and I am like, all right, here's our reality. Let's find a better, less stressful way to operate within this reality. And I was, this was about 6 months before COVID happened. So I was still in person with an executive team, and we were doing a retreat. And about 2:00 in the afternoon, one of the executives started to cry.
Wow.
And he was like, I'm so scared I'm going to miss my kid's childhood. He said, there's so much work. He said, my weeks are so scattered and so interrupted. There's no time to actually get the work done. And so he said, I'm working every Saturday and Sunday in order to get to keep my job. And he said, I don't think it's worth it. And I'm like, well, it's time to take back your weekends. And that was the first time I said it.
That was the impetus right there.
And it became the mantra, right? And here's the thing, the work is never going to end.
Right.
And so often we're so emotionally connected to this fact that we've got to get the list done. And that's just we're chasing this carrot that's always moving.
Right.
And so anyway, we worked together to figure out how to make that happen. We put some strategies in place so the team could be more effective during the week. And if we can increase outputs per hour, during the regular work week, then we have the freedom to choose if we want to work on the weekend.
Right. So, and I like that last point with the freedom to choose, because you're clearly not saying that working on weekends are bad things, or there's something wrong with them, or you should be chastised for doing it.
No.
If it's your choice, then that's okay.
Exactly. See, I love to work weekends. So if I were ever to say, don't work a weekend, I'd be a complete hypocrite, because when inspiration strikes, that's when I'm going to work.
Right.
I'm a business owner. And so, but I also have the choice, because I get the important work done, that on Wednesday afternoon, if I want to have a nap, or I want to go out with some friends or go take some time off, I can do that as well. So that's where productivity in and of itself is not really my passion. Mm-hmm. It's the choice that comes from having optimal productivity to live your life in a way that you actually love it.
Yeah, no, again, I love it. The piece about the choice, that's what we're talking about here. It's about having that particular choice and doing what you think you want to do for yourself or don't want to do. And I think that's a great sort of driver's seat to be in, because that's really what you are. You're in the driver's seat. You're the one taking control of your sort of situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many people are, if you look at the statistics, so this is anecdotal, but it's also statistically accurate. People are so on the cusp of burnout. We talk about the great, what are they calling that, where everybody's leaving their jobs? And I don't think everybody's leaving their jobs, but the mass exodus or something.
Yeah.
And I think, okay, but if you leave your job and you go somewhere else and you take the same patterns that are causing your stress, nothing is going to change. And so I'd prefer to work with someone and say, okay, let's figure out how you can be happy and less stressed within this current reality. And then if you choose to leave the company, that's a different story, because you'll have new skill set and you'll be happier wherever you go.
Right.
But running away is not going to be the answer. Actually, a good friend of mine, she was had the worst boss, right? Like a micromanager. We've all been there, right?
Yep.
And
we've all been there.
Just was not a good fit. And she's like, that's it. I'm leaving the company. They keep promoting her. I can't get out from under her. And I'm like, okay, you know what? But here's the thing. Who knows who you're going to get at the new company? And she's like, I can't handle it anymore. I'm out. Yes. She goes to the competitor. Not 30 days later, did they not hire that same person? Bring her over as the new boss. Awesome. So here she was, left a job, ended up with the same boss 30 days later.
Yeah.
Same problem.
That's right.
You've got to fix within the reality we have.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great illustration of, as funny as and humorous that is, as a really great illustration of sort of where the work starts, right? And it's with you, the individual, before you start to go, well, the landscape isn't working for me, or the environment's right, or the boss isn't good. It starts with you and your response to it. And again, that's why I thought the piece of the choice is really, really good. Is we're not talking about necessarily time management when we talk about take back our weekends here. Because I think for some, they'll equate it to, well, you just got to manage your time better, right? And that's how you not have to work weekends. But it's not about time management. That's not what we're talking about, is it?
Well, it's not, although that needs to be a piece of it.
Okay.
Right. So at the end of the day, we need to have a good way to track what you need to get done. I call it a task circle. And I have a way that I found that I think works really, really well. The thing is that the solution won't stick as well if you don't do the work up front.
Right.
And so this is a lot of times when we have an obstacle and we want to solve a problem, we immediately go, okay, what's the fix?
Right.
But my philosophy is we need to first understand what's the real issue.
Right.
And then self-awareness, how am I responding to the issue, and potentially, and this is the hard work, how am I making it harder to solve?
Right.
And then whatever time management system you choose will have a fighting chance.
Right.
And so, the book is really about problem solving.
Okay. Yeah.
It's about the problem solving framework. And then we apply it to the issue of a lack of feeling like you have control over your time. Got you.
And so, so again, the time thing is not as if time is the root cause of this, right? And then so again, I understand, very much, time does come in a factor for sure. There's no question about that. But to label it as, you got this problem because you can't manage time, that's not the starting point at all.
It's not. And, when we look at our patterns of I'm fascinated by the human experience. Right? Like, why, when we know what we're supposed to do we not actually do the things?
Because we like the hard way, right? Isn't that?
And, I think it's so incredible. And I used to be someone who really beat myself up. I was had a horrible inner critic. I was angry at myself. I was embarrassed for my existence. I didn't think I deserved to exist, right? Like, I actually had a Post-it note on my mirror. It said, "Deserve to hit the pillow." And, some people say, "Oh, well, that's good. You're striving." No, I'm judging, right? Because a lot of nights I didn't think I deserved it, even though my body was collapsing and I was burning out. And I think about all of the hours of capacity, not just time, but the emotional, the mental, the physical, the spiritual capacity that is stolen from these human experience patterns that are in our heart, in our mind, in our body.
Yes.
And to me, that's the opposite of living your audacious life, right? That is, but I think so many people, when I really get a chance to talk one-on-one and have those conversations, are living in that personal hell.
Yes. And
we got to break free from it.
Right.
And it's easier said than done. But one of the things in the book is I have the solution activation principles.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So of them, one of them is the second response is the priority. Get to it ASAP. And here's why. Because often when we want to change something, so we've done the work and then we're like, okay, I'm never going to talk badly to myself again. I'm going to be my own best cheerleader because I know that I'm my best friend for my whole life, because there's that voice in the head. And so you're like, okay, great. And then it's rainbows and sunshine and unicorns, right? All day long. And then at the end of the night, you realize you forgot to do something, or you dropped the ball on a project and you're like, oh, I'm such an idiot.
Yep.
And then your other voice goes, oh, well, see, there you are. You're always going to be mean to yourself. I give up. So, but the thing is, if we've had decades of reinforcing behaviors in our life, we can't expect it to change like that.
That internal self-talk, Allison, the things that we tell ourselves, there really needs to be more time and attention paid to how we talk to ourselves, because that so much is a starting point for where we either get off the trails or we get on back on track. Because for a lot of us, we beat ourselves up, and whether with these false images or negative messages we've gotten, and we feed that and we kind of keep that in there, or we create them ourselves, they're just pulling us further away from where we really should be.
Yeah, it's so true. And I don't even know if people recognize how angrily they're talking to themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I know I didn't. And so part of my story is I had a surgery.
Okay.
Things went very wrong. I ended up with neuropathic pain, 5 surgeries to try to fix the damage from the first. And then life happened, right? 6 people in my life died very close together.
Wow.
And I ended up with a whole bunch of injuries. And I often think back now, like I was having all these injuries, right? Like random things, like broken nose from a tire, like it was just silly.
Right.
But I was beating myself up every day. And the universe was just playing the game.
So like, next up, here you go.
So I was sitting with my doctor. I remember being at Mount Sinai Hospital, and my neurologist said, Allison, you are going to have to reevaluate your expectations for your life. You will never work full-time again. You will never be off medication. And it's time we start talking about going on disability.
Right.
And I knew in the middle of the tears and the hyperventilating and the, the screaming and that's not the answer. Like I knew that wasn't going to be the answer. I wasn't going to give up. And it started this whole journey of self-reflection and resilience and research and trying to find an answer. And so as a part of my healing journey, I ended up with Dr. Tony. I call him Dr. T in one of my books.
Yeah.
And he's a cognitive behavioral therapist who specializes in traumatic pain.
Okay.
And he and I were together for 8 years. So I'd see him every 2 to 3 weeks for 8 years. So really, like a lot of my work is based in cognitive behavioral therapy. And when we first started working together, he'd be like, who are you talking about? Like, because I'd say things, right? Because it's a safe place to actually have the internal voice come out. Right. Like, what are you saying? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, because it didn't even dawn on me that what I was saying about myself to describe myself, because it was articulating it for the first time. Right. Like it was coming out. I just thought it was normal. And he's like, would you ever say that to somebody else? I'm like, well, probably not. No. I wouldn't think so. But because it's just this thing. So one of the tricks that I use that really helped me overcome it, and I hope this will help others, is to give our internal voice an external presence.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is when we start having those thoughts, I want you to grab a little piece of paper, a Post-it note, whatever, and just write it down and get it out of your head. Because then we have objectivity.
Gotcha. Right. And then what you do with that object, internal object, throw it in the garbage, file it away, whatever. Yeah, it's not yours, right? It doesn't belong to you. You don't own it. You don't keep it, and you're not retaining. And that's really what the point of that is. And I think that's it's an important exercise to go through, because first you're identifying that this thing here isn't of me, right? And it's I like that. That's a good exercise. That's a good thing to do.
Yeah, because then if you can do that, if you can start interrupting the pattern.
Yes.
Right. This is getting to the second response, that solution activation principle.
So I was going to say the recognition is the first step, right? Yeah.
That's right. And if we don't know what's happening, we can't fix it.
That's right. So that's correct.
We'll do that. And then, so once you see it, then you look at it and you're like, okay, is that really true? And you look at it objectively.
Yes.
And maybe it is true.
Yeah.
Or maybe a part of it is true. Yep. Or maybe it's true in this little itty bitty moment.
Right. But you don't have to own it, right? Like, so let's go with that. Let's say hypothetically, there is some aspects of truth to it. That doesn't mean that it's etched in stone or it's permanent or concrete and it has to be your existence. You can acknowledge it and say, okay, fine. What do I do with this now that I know what this is? This truth exists.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and then you can actually even combat it. So when I was really struggling with my neuropathic pain.
Yep.
Hey, by the way, off medication, working full time.
Take that, Dr. T.
So I feel so proud of that.
As you should.
And not that my pain is gone. It's just I know how to deal with it. Right?
You manage it. Yeah.
Part of what happens.
Yep.
I got sidetracked there, what we were talking about. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But I think that, this sense of, actually, I forget what I was saying. So anyway, we'll continue.
We'll continue. No, it'll come back. But something I definitely wanted to touch on with you is this idea of this sort of this hustle culture, this grind thing. There's a belief that says that we've got to work 18-hour days if you want to achieve something that you're after, and you have to grind, you have to hustle. That to me, and I've always known it to be true, and as we're talking now, it's very clear in my mind that that's a misconception. It doesn't have to be that way, right? But that's something. So go back to the things that we tell ourselves internally. This is what I have to do if I want to get to X, Y, or Z.
Right, and not only is it not a good, like it's not required.
Right.
It actually is not healthy. So the hustle culture, and by the way, I'm all for the hustle. Like,
sure,
do the work.
Yes.
And you have to be able to pull back.
Correct.
You have to be able to turn it off so that you can even give your brain the time to relax and rebuild and recharge so that it can have the big creative innovation.
Right.
So that we can, show up refreshed and ready to go.
Right.
And it's just this hustle culture. And that was what I was going to say, is that I had such a judgment that I was lazy.
Right.
Because I was in such pain, I had to collapse. And so I'd be like, you're such an idiot. What's wrong with you? Suck it up. Let's get going. And the truth is, all that did was rob me of the opportunity to heal my body.
Yes.
Because I was so in a place of judgment of what I needed to do.
Right.
I wasn't being lazy. I was in pain.
That's right. And that's okay. Like, I mean, the fact that you experienced that pain and this is how you're responding to it. And again, we're beating up ourselves because, hey, you should be up doing whatever. But the last point I want to make on, the hustle mentality and the hustle culture is it's almost the judgments applied to that are almost, that's what you're supposed to be doing. That's what you have to do. So there isn't a turn off the switch and recharge, and I use the word refresh. I think that's a perfect word because you have to be able to refresh, to be renewed, to continue the hustle. But it's not hustle 24/7 to go to bed and get up early and do all over again on this this wheel, if you will, because that's not healthy.
What a disappointing way to look back on your life. Right? If you never had a chance to enjoy the moments that were part of it, because the hustle, even if you're in the middle of the hustle, we need to be able to go, oh, look at me in the hustle, and like embrace it and like enjoy it. And I think that a lot of times the hustle and the rut of that, just buzzy do is actually a form of denial of the fact that we have to deal with things that really matter in our lives, right? The hurt, the grief, the processing, we need space for that.
Right.
And so when you think about stress, gets a bad rap.
Yes.
There's actually a lot of really good stress. So stress serves a purpose. It keeps us alive. If it weren't for stress, we would have been like eaten by the lions and tigers and bears. So am I, right? Like at some point in our lives, we would not be here. But the whole point of stress is we're supposed to be like, say you're out in the garden.
Right.
And you're, eating the berries, and the bear comes along and your stress hormones are supposed to go, into high gear, get you to safety. And then once the bear is gone and you're safe, the hormones come back down, you go out and you keep going about the berries. The problem is that we are acting like in a society that the bears are in our office building or in our home.
In our lives or homes, right?
Like your to-do list is not a predator. If it is causing you stress, we have a problem.
Right.
Because the to-do list isn't going to end. So if we're having this expectation that circumstances external to us are going to change in order for our stress response to change, we're never going to win the game.
Right.
We're never going to win it.
Right.
So we've got to use this up and down of stress to harness it. So really good stress will focus us.
Okay. Yeah.
And it will inspire us. Reach goals, and it'll keep us alive. But it only works in the burst.
Yes.
It doesn't work as a constant.
Right.
That's the problem.
The burst.
We're acting like it's a constant, and it's not a constant. It's a up, down, which is why I'm like, okay, let's put 45 to 75 minutes of a block of totally focused. I've got accountability. I've got a goal. I've got a deadline. I'm going to do this. Go hard, do it, then come down, look up, check your LinkedIn, check your Facebook, do whatever you want to do, come off, go for a walk, do a minute of skipping, come back, do it again.
Yeah. As you describe the up and down, that essentially, Allison, it's kind of the human experience.
Yeah.
Like our lives are meant to be that up and down, and when you one of the things analogies I use is kind of on the other side of greatness is where all the good stuff lies, right? So if you can find a way to get past the crazy moments, and I don't believe moments are meant to capitalize the entire day. So use the analogy of in your car and you're driving to work and someone cuts you off on the 401 or the highway, right? You get cut off, they continue on their merry way and you're left. What do you do with that? Do you take that to work and carry that into the rest of your day and it impacts your dinner at night? Like it gets to a point where it shouldn't have an impact, right?
Well, it's funny. I actually wrote a blog post around the domino, like how a bad day doesn't actually need to be a bad day.
Right.
And it's exactly what you're talking about. So let's say you wake up late, your alarm doesn't go off, you forgot to charge your phone. So now you're having a bad day, right? And then you are rushing and you spill your coffee on your shirt. Now you got to change your shirt.
Yeah.
Then you get into the car and you hit traffic jam. And then you get into the office and, if you still go to an office, right? And somebody doesn't hold the door for you. And then, you go and then you get into talk to your colleagues. You're like, oh my God, it's been such an awful day. When in actual fact, each of those instances, tiny little itty bitty obstacles, were completely independent of the next.
Right. Right.
And so the problem is that if we're not emotionally disciplined to process, that sucked.
Right.
And then release it, not just let it go. Like, I don't believe in that because we can't deny that the suckage happens.
Correct. That's right. That's right.
We got to be okay with it.
That's right. That's right.
Right. We got to put it into perspective.
Correct.
And so the fact that the shirt got coffee on it isn't related to the fact that you were in a traffic jam.
Correct. That's right. That's right. That's right. And I'll also say it's interesting because sometimes those obstacles are opportunities. So let's use the example of the shirt. You spill something on the shirt. Oh wow, this gives me an opportunity to put on a better shirt. Or the other side of it is because when we talk about things like gratitude as an example, hey, at least I have another shirt I can put on. Like there's all different ways of looking at it. So my point is there's different ways of attacking it. And in the moment, it might be seen as an obstacle or problem, but could be an opportunity too.
Yeah, definitely. And, with those smaller things, to me, those are just tasks. They don't even need the storyline. Okay. So like if I spill coffee on my shirt, I literally am like, oh, coffee on my shirt. I don't even drink coffee anymore. Actually, I drink coffee, but I just go change the shirt. Like no emotional, this is the thing. I think we're giving so much emotion and mental capacity to things that don't matter.
Yes. Yes.
And then what happens at the end of the day, we don't have any capacity left over for the things that do matter.
Exactly. Exactly. I was actually, one of the things I had made a point to talk about was the impact that worry has on us. And you just nailed it. That's because that's essentially what worry does to us, right? We worry about things that don't really matter and we lose that time for the things that do matter.
I always think of worry as a down payment on a problem you may never have.
I like that one. Yeah.
And it's so interesting because worry does absolutely nothing to change the outcome. And so going back to the solution activation principles in the book, one of them is trust yourself. If the worst thing happens, we don't need to rehearse for it.
Gotcha.
Trust yourself that when it happens, you can deal with it, that you'll find the skills, you'll be resourceful enough in order to deal with it. And one of the things with worry, and by the way, I come from a very long line of worriers. So I am like,
but you owned it, right? You owned it. This is what we do.
My dad, I wouldn't even be out the driveway. He was already worrying, about the car and when I was going to get there. And, it was just,
I love it.
He was really a good worrier.
Gotcha.
So, it's a habit that can be changed.
Yes.
It really can. But again, you're not going to just say, oh, I'm never going to worry again. Oh, good point, Allison. Yeah, no, maybe I won't worry and then never worry again. Of course you're going to worry.
No.
So we just have to interrupt it. Can we take it from worrying about the big meeting 3 days in advance to worrying about it for 3 hours? To worrying about it for 3 minutes, catching yourself and shifting the story.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get people to do, right? Like, we don't need to be perfect. God knows I've got a long way to go, right? As we all do. And can we interrupt the patterns that keep us stuck?
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, worrying is going to be there, but it's how much, very similar to the conversation we had about stress. It's going to be there. How much of it do we allow to consume ourselves, right? That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on the cool ice cube analogy that you.
Oh, fun.
That
okay, I love this one.
No, I do. I thought it was a great one. You know what? I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to let you go because it's a good one. I love it.
I muted while I was pouring water.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so for the pause.
Yeah. That was dramatic. This was a dramatic pause. I was at the edge of my seat. They're like, ice cube. This sounds great. Like,
oh, my favorite one. Okay, so the ice cube that became the snowman. And so if you imagine every task and obstacle that you have to do in your day as an ice cube, and your job is to melt it. So you get to choose how you melt it, hairdryer, whatever, labor or laser pointer, whatever, right?
Yep.
The more efficiently and effectively we melt the ice cube, the more time you have left over for whatever else is in your life. And melting ice cubes in our jobs is actually not that hard because you're talented, you know what you're doing. But as part of the human experience, we also have accessible to us at all times a mound of snow. And this snow is represented by misplaced emotion, negative storyline, and barriers to performance like worry, judgment, that internal critic, not saying no, not setting boundaries. Yes. There are 31 of them that I list in the book.
Yep.
And so what we do is we take that ice cube and we pack it in a little bit of snow, misplaced emotion. So this might be you're afraid about cash flow or your job security, or, you've just got, a friend who has a cancer diagnosis and your child comes up to you and says, hey, daddy, do you want to go play? And you snap at your child. Right. So there's an example of misplaced emotion. Or it could be that I'm not good enough doing this. Why am I doing it anyway? On this task.
Yes.
Then we go and we add in a little negative storyline. Nobody's going to read this report anyway. My boss doesn't care. I'm, nobody else is pulling their weight, so I'm not going to bother. So now we've got an ice cube, which is still the task.
Yep.
We've wrapped it. We've got a snowball for the head with some misplaced emotion. We've got some negative storyline.
Yep.
And then we add in those barriers to performance. And we've got this entire snowman. So now when you think about your daily capacity,
yes,
what's harder to melt, the ice cube or the snowman?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that the task or the obstacle is still just the ice cube.
Yeah.
Everything else is stress that's manufactured unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And so my problem solving framework is all about blasting through the snow. If we just melt the ice cubes, if we don't give them misplaced emotion, if we don't give them the negative storyline, it doesn't have to be a positive storyline. I'm not all about power of positive thinking and being in denial, but just reality.
Yep.
Like I'm good with a little totes of reality for people.
Yep.
Right.
We need that. We need it.
Yeah. And the procrastination, it was funny. I remember before COVID, I was out for lunch with a friend of mine, and she's an executive at a national firm, but works locally.
Okay.
And head office had sent down a new reporting system.
Okay.
And she was not happy about it. She's like, look, 3 weeks ago, head office sent this down. They're absolutely clueless. I don't know what's wrong with them. I think it's time I go get another job. With these people, they just don't get it. They don't know how hard we work on the ground. Like it just on and on. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is serious. Tell me about this report. Like, how long is it going to take you? She leans back in her chair. She's like, 15 minutes.
And meanwhile, this big snowman is sitting next to her.
I'm like, you have wasted 3 weeks of your emotional, mental, physical, spiritual capacity on a 15-minute report that you could have done in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Because you start compounding that.
That's right.
With every task. And no wonder we're too busy to enjoy our lives.
That's right. And then what happens is when you think about doing that task, you have all these things that are attached to it. And it gets to your point, it gets away from the fact that it's only a 15-minute thing with this big story that has all this emotion attached to it that we oftentimes will put off, procrastinate, not do, leave our jobs, leave our relationships, leave the situations, all because of all the things that we've attached to the task to begin with.
Exactly. And so I here's the thing, that those attachments, actually, I read what book was I reading a couple weeks ago, and it was the word ornamentation.
Okay.
Ornamentation. I love that word. I was like, that's it. People are taking their tasks and ornamenting them. I don't think that's a word, but like adding on all these little decorations unnecessarily. And it's the decorations that are causing the chaos,
right?
And the stress and the unhappiness and like changing the shirt. If we go back to our coffee example, it does not require an emotional anything.
Right.
Like if you burned yourself with the coffee, put some polysporin on and get on with it.
That's right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right.
And this is the habit, but I think we're just going through life and getting pulled in a million different directions. And it's like, if we just come back and they're like, okay, let's look at this. What are the ice cubes in my life?
Yes.
Now, some of them are going to be bigger.
Yep.
Right. But the bigger the ice cube, if it's an obstacle, then we need the objectivity in order to solve it effectively.
No, we absolutely do. And the vantage point and the view that we take on things, we have to be able to see it for what it truly is, and strip away the emotion, strip away the negative feelings, misconceptions, the self-talk. I mean, with all these things that we've talked about, it's so fascinating how they all feed and build in to this snowman that we got that
absolutely
tearing us apart.
So I love it when I go into a company and I speak at a conference, and then 3 months later, I get pictures where like on the whiteboard, they've drawn snowmen.
Nice.
Because they're still using it, right? They're like, okay, guys, what's the real ice cube?
Right.
Like, because as a team, collectively, we can get so bogged down into the obstacles and this is happening in the team dynamics and the drama and all of that. Again, human experience, the mound of snow accessible to each and every one of us at any moment. Then it's like when we can strip through that, when we can blast through the snow and just deal with the ice cubes and get everybody on that same page and using that language, it makes problem solving for teams. It makes it so much easier. It makes innovation more likely.
Yes.
It makes a great culture, a more positive work environment. Like there's so many positive domino impacts when we start stripping away the snow.
And you've got nobody working weekends.
Right.
No one's working on top of all of that. No, but I think all of those things feed into exactly the core of certainly what your message is, and what we're trying to do is really take control, be the one in the driver's seat, be the one to have the choice to work the weekends or not, right? Again, as we said at the top, we're not chastising for people if they want to work weekends. If that's where you find your joy, that's where you find your creativity, if that's what inspires you, then by all means do it. But you only should be able to do those things if it's our choice. It's got to be our choice.
And I think what happens, especially in the corporate world, okay, and in the business world too, but like if you're a business owner, but in the corporate world for sure, is that people will say to me, I need to work the weekend because it's the only time I get uninterrupted time to actually get my groove on. And I'm like, okay, well, the truth is that's a boundary issue. That's a culture issue. Because if we're not finding you any uninterrupted focused time during the week, then you're probably not getting your important work done anyway.
Right.
And so it might be meeting heavy culture. Well, let's drop every meeting by 15 minutes. Like, what is it? Or put a sock on the door and say, I'm not available.
Right.
Or just turn off your phone for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Or, collectively as a team, say, when's your best workflow?
Yes.
When is your energy the best to get your work done? And you know what? I'm going to respect your 2 hours at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to respect mine.
That's right. As you were saying that, the first word that came to mind is distractions, right? Because, distractions are out there. They are going to happen. It's just our response to them and how we manage them.
Yes. And unless you're triaging heart attacks, right? Like most things can wait. And it's so much more exciting to focus over here.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Or focus over there than to do the important and difficult, not urgent work that is actually what will move the needle forward, actually get a project launched and shipped
Nice. Allison, this has been such a wonderful and delightful conversation. When I was sort of thinking about, and we set this up a while ago, and sitting about the conversation, what it would look like. First off, it very much feeds into just this podcast in general, right? In terms of living that your best audacious life and what sort of things that you can do, and whether that's living that best audacious life on the weekend or during the week. Like, these are still things that are necessary requirements to do that. So it very much was a wonderful fit, and glad that you spent some time chatting with me here. So the last thing I want to ask you about before we go is the starting point of that process, right? I know we sort of touched on that, but kind of to sort of summarize and round things out here, the starting point. So someone says, okay, I want to take back my week because I want to sort of take in charge and take control. What does that look like, that starting point?
Well, read my book. That's a good starting point.
There we go.
Take back your weekend, stress less, do more, be happier. And then cheekily beyond that, I would love you to just take a piece of paper and write down everything that is causing you stress.
Yeah.
And look at it objectively and say, are these tasks? Are they obstacles? Or are they true adversities?
Right.
And adversities are catastrophic external forces that will forever change the way we know our life to be.
Right.
And those are the things we need to process and heal. We can't just, use the gotta go technique on grief.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So look at those. And I have a lot of free videos out there and, work to explain that more in depth. But here's the thing: tasks we do, obstacles we solve, and adversities we must heal. And society has it backwards, right? Tasks we glorify.
Yes.
Right. And obstacles we get really excited and dramatic about, like, oh, look what happened.
Or avoid.
Right. Or we just, totally denial, avoid them. Like, oh, did that happen? Didn't see it. No.
Yeah. That's true.
And then adversities we tend to minimize.
Yeah.
So, somebody's just come back from, going through a divorce, say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine. Right. So I want to flip that in terms of how you allocate your daily emotions, giving the hardest stuff, the life stuff, the stuff that defines us, that makes us who we are at the end of our lives, more emotional cred in our lives.
Yes.
And then the task, just like start noticing. So when we do that writing down, I think that's a really good objective starting place. And then just start to notice, becoming compassionately curious about yourself. When am I adding on misplaced emotion? Imagine that ice cube. I just got to melt this thing. And what am I adding to it? Because it's a lot harder to melt a snowman than it is to melt an ice cube.
I love it. Oh, I love it. That's so wonderful. That's so, Allison, like I said, this has been such a delight and treat. And thank you for taking the time. Thank you for writing the book. For our listeners, where can we direct them to pick up their copy or learn more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a weekly lift up that I send every Tuesday morning. It's a 1-minute read, and you can get that on my website at allisongraham.co. And you can also get the book on Amazon or wherever you like to get your books. But definitely come by, join the Lift Up weekly thing. And I'm on LinkedIn a lot too.
Okay.
So that's 3 calls to action, but choose one.
Yeah.
So the book, the Lift Up on my website, or LinkedIn, come on over and follow me and connect. That would be great.
I think they should choose all 3.
Go for it. I love it.
That's awesome. Again, Allison, this has been such a delight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing. And we'll all the best, and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. And thank you for the work you're doing. I love your show. You do amazing interviews. You have awesome guests, and you're living your audacious life, your best audacious life. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. All the best, Allison. Take care. Back we are here on the podcast, and I wanted to send my thanks to Allison for stopping by, being here on the Audacious Living Podcast for such a good chat. Thank you so much. The conversation was absolutely delightful, and I'm certain that listeners walked away with a ton of great stuff. Allison left us so much to think about, but if there's just one thing I take from my conversation with her, it would be this. So much of what happens to us in life falls back on the choice that we make for ourselves, what we choose to do, where we choose to go, who we choose to spend our time with, and what we allow us to consume our time. Again, nobody is saying that working weekends is a bad thing or you should be condemned or chastised for doing so. If it's a conscious choice that you've made and you're doing it, and you're not doing it as a result of pressure or stress or an obligation, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. The key is to work smarter, not harder. As the saying goes, it's not the number of hours you put into the work, it's the amount of work you put into those hours. Hey, listen, if you haven't registered for email notifications of the podcast, please know that you can do so simply by heading over to bestaudaciouslife.com. All you've got to do is enter in your email address and you will be immediately connected and get content sent to you right away. Now, we've reached the end of another episode, and again, I want to send a big shout out to Allison Graham. Her book, we'll give it a plug one more time here. Take Back Your Weekends, Stress Less, Do More, Be Happier. Head over to her website and check it out. To our listeners, I thank you as always for your ongoing tremendous support. I appreciate your being such amazing listeners and lovers of audaciousness. Those are the people that I really want to take a moment and say thank you. Again, the tremendous ongoing support is awesome and I appreciate it. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.